I was scared. I was angry. I was depressed. Sometimes your work environment can make you a little depressed. And I had to be honest with myself and say, my body didn't fail me. I failed my body. I'll say it again. My body did not fail me. I failed my body. And at that moment, because sometimes we got to get scared before we do things. So we got to get us scared before we make a change. And I remember the doctor said, well, I want you to go to the hospital. And I'm following instructions. I remember I called my parents. It was roughly about 10 p.m. Now, they can already know from the oldest, just based off my tone of voice, if it's something serious. And I remember I woke them up. I was like, hey, Mom, Dad, I don't want you to be concerned. But yet, I got diagnosed as a diabetic. I'm going to the hospital. I heard the change in their voice. I heard my father in the background standing straight up. Like, hey, what's going on with Tyrell? And I said, hey, let them know I'm going to be okay. I said, hey, let them know I'm going to be okay. And then I'm going to defeat this. I am going to do better. And from that moment on, man, I have been working over the last 7 years to continuously improve my health.
Time to embrace change and be about that life.
This is Dr. Batch with the About That Life podcast, the podcast about life or living intentionally forever. Now, you all may or may not know that November is Diabetes Awareness Month. And diabetes is one of those things as a cardiologist that I initially stayed away from, right? Because I'm not an endocrinologist. I'm not giving insulin and doing those things. But what we do know is that diabetes has evolved into what we like to call a cardiovascular risk equivalent, meaning even if you don't have heart disease specifically, diabetes increases your cardiovascular risk significantly. Now, one of the challenges with diabetes is in many cases, people don't even feel sick. The problem is that through metabolic changes, whether it be aging, lack of activity, or a change in our diet, diabetes slowly starts to take root, impacting our vessels, our kidneys, our brain, and increasing our risk of everything from heart attack to heart failure to even stroke. So today, what I wanted to do is not give you a clinical discussion about the risk of diabetes. I know that most of us know, but I wanted you to hear from a friend of mine. Not only a friend, but a brother in the fraternity that I love so much, the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. This is a brother who battled and is battling diabetes, and I want to say it right now, he's overcome it. Today, we have joining us Brother Tyrrell Rodgers. He's a member of the St. Louis alumni chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi, and he is a financial professional who really embraced giving back to community and creating a community around health, wellness, education, all the things that we know, but it came from a simple test. A test that revealed to him that although he felt healthy, looked good, felt good, his body was slowly working against him. He was diagnosed with diabetes and really made it a point to change not only his mindset, but also his lifestyle. And in doing so, he brought the community with him. So I want to introduce to some and present to others. I'm going to just call you Brother Rodgers. Oh, you want Mr. Rodgers? Brother, how do you want to be introduced?
Dr. Betts, brother, if you would just introduce me as Ty Rodgers, because I always go with the thing of, if you call me Ty Rodgers, we must have be good friends. And I think we're going to be even better friends after this conversation.
Excellent. Well, tell the people about yourself.
Yes. So getting into it, native St. Louis and still residing in St. Louis. Grew up, both parents in the family household, a little unique in our times today. Younger siblings, I was the first child, and you had to lead by example. First to graduate, first to go to college and graduate, and just wanting to do better. My parents had provided me that opportunity. I thought that it was my duty to honor them in doing so. Plus, not to mention, if they took a step forward coming from the state of Mississippi and the whole background of sharecropping and working the fields and then getting into blue collar jobs to try to better their family, I thought it was only my duty to try to do a little bit better and try to put a smile on their faces. That whole first child obligation that gets bestowed upon us, even though we don't know it's being bestowed upon us.
Did that upbringing kind of push you into the world of finance? Because I know that, financial expert working for consulting, the IRS, major companies and corporations. How did that develop? Because when you think about many of us, especially us with Southern background, I'm from North Carolina originally, that's not something we're exposed to. So how did you kind of embark upon that journey?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. You're going through high school and you're getting exposed to some business classes, things of that nature. But in reality, it came down to being a realist and being realistic. Initially, I wanted to go into the arts. I wanted to be on theater, back behind the drama scenes, things of that nature. However, the more practical side came in. I said, well, artists sometimes starve a little bit. Very politely, you like to eat. So I looked at the business. I said, well, hey, why don't you go in and try to become more knowledgeable on business? And I thought that accounting would be the best aspect to do so. Being able to understand the numbers, the financial background, how to better benefit and help entities and organizations do better in their financial standings. That's what led me, because I always believed in financial empowerment, financial enrichment, and I thought that this would be the best avenue to do so. Looking into it, man, accounting has served me really well. But I will also encourage, more importantly, that we learn about finance.
So how do you start a conversation surrounding finance when you ain't got nothing to start with? And I think, and again, and for both of us, I think we both have been blessed that's not the case. But for many, saving is a challenge where, 3 months of emergency fund. Well, every month it is an emergency. So how do you, I guess, start? What would be that timeline for, let's say, someone fresh out of college, or even, back it up in high school, thinking about how they can insulate themselves from a financial standpoint, even if they don't have a whole lot to start?
Well, it's about being honest with yourself and saying two things. What is it that I wish to know or that I'm not aware of / do not know? And what are the goals or things that I wish to achieve? What are some of the things that I wish to accomplish? For some people, it's a quality credit score. For other people, it is being able to have enough savings for to have that 3 to 6 month savings. And then for some, it's just to be able to make it to the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And, it starts by doing something, and you hear this by a lot of financial professionals, looking at your budget and looking at what you have coming in and what you are spending your money on. Why are you afraid of the decisions that you decided to make? The real question that goes a little bit deeper is, why did you decide to make certain decisions? Is it something that you felt, were you frustrated and felt entitled? Was it an emotional decision? How sound of a decision did you make? Because one thing that we also know is that whether financial or personal, however you look at it, ideally, you do not wish to make a decision based off emotions. Many times we have had to start back over. We have had to go back, relook at what we were doing, and as we say, fine tune it.
Mm-hmm.
But it only helps to make you better. It goes with that saying of iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
Once I know better, I can do better. And you can even go with the analogy of the phrase of, hey, you know what? If you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, and all we're sitting here is trying to, one, help you to feel empowered. More importantly, I wish to be an example of, I have not always had it together. I have fallen on my face more times than you know. The story I'm going to share with you, this is the highlights, but we don't have enough time to go through when you got knocked down and didn't know if you were going to get back up. If when you sometimes may have doubted yourself, but then had to get an encouraging word or had to say, you know what, I'm better than this, I want better, and remember what your initial purpose was.
And I wish that health and finance weren't so linked, because even your story, and we'll go ahead and transition there. I mean, when we talked the other day and you told me one of the biggest reasons you had some instability in, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, in your health coverage was due to finance, not because you didn't have, just because, well, we need health insurance. And by health insurance, so in healthcare, we call that conundrum the social determinants of health. And what that is essentially sometimes where you live, how much you make, what you have access to, limits or can put a ceiling on the type of healthcare you get and the frequency of healthcare you get. And when we talk about chronic diseases like high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, when we talk about those chronic illnesses, if you can get in front of them, you can offset a lot of the more expensive complications that come, right? Just because you have diabetes doesn't mean you're on a road to an amputation. Just because you have high blood pressure and diabetes doesn't mean you're on a road to a stroke or dialysis. But oftentimes, it is our financial limitations for whatever reason, and especially given our current political climate, that creates some instability. So I know we had talked about your scenario, and what I want you to do is walk people through when you first went to that health fair and how you were told that information, and then we'll bring them along on this story. But it was so powerful knowing that a tool just as simple as a community health fair really changed your life. And I think had that not occurred, we may be having a different conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give you a time frame, it was roughly May, I would say April, late April or early May of 2018. I was at a community health fair, out supporting the community. And I went by a nursing organization's table to get my blood pressure checked. And, we're talking, going back and forth, just having good old conversation. But then the reading came back and I saw the young lady's facial expression completely change. And it went from a joking, friendly conversation, like you're talking with your neighbor, to, sir, I'm a little concerned. Your blood pressure came back extremely high, abnormal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask that you take a couple minutes. We're going to retake your blood pressure again. And we did that. And then the results came back similar, just as high, not really that much of a change. That nurse strongly encouraged that I go to my primary and be checked out and get some blood work and just hey, go get your health looked at by your primary professional.
Now, let
I
me ask
did
this
that.
real quick. Now, did you feel bad? Did you have a headache, blurry vision, chest pain, stomach ache, anything like that?
No. So nothing obvious, or I would say nothing that would make me obviously feel that I was bad. Wasn't breathing heavy, wasn't going into any sweats. The only thing that I was at that moment in time was overweight. But the one thing that's also interesting is if you're hanging around people, at 5 degrees of separation, if you hang around individuals and everybody looking like you don't think anything's abnormal,
Yeah.
So fast forward, I go to my doctor. She does the blood work. And at this moment in time, she was an old school doctor, not going through your electronic records and putting the information on the internet. She mailed it to the house. And I remember to this day, very vividly, I got the mail and I opened up the information anxiously. And it said in the notes, Mr. Rodgers, we're going to put you on insulin medication immediately. Your A1C is a 13.1. And she gave me the breakdown of what, statistically, what would be considered diabetes, what would be considered prediabetes, and what would be considered normal. So for those that may not be familiar, 6.5, well, in some situations, 6.4, 6.5, a tenth, means that, or higher, means that you are in diabetic status. If you recall, earlier in the conversation, I said I was at a 13.1. And at that moment, I'm in the house and you have this saying of, have you ever felt like you're surrounded by loved ones and everything, but you still feel lonely? At that moment, I felt like I was all by myself. And let me help you to understand what I mean by all by myself. My mother's a diabetic. My grandmother was a diabetic before I transitioned. I've seen some of the impact that it had on them, particularly my mother. I'll give you 2 scenarios. We were in the state of Mississippi attending a funeral. Unbeknownst to family, my mother didn't bring all of her medication. And right in the middle of the funeral, unfortunately, she had a diabetes attack. Whereas my mother has naturally curly hair. And in an instance, a snap of a finger, her hair went to soaking wet. Drenched, she slightly became unconscious. And at that moment, and I'm being sincere about this, the hard conversation was I recognized that my family and I had never talked about how to care for your loved one if they were having this scenario or in that situation. I'm in the forest. I visited the state around family, yet I don't know where the local hospital is at. And in the state of Mississippi, in some areas, a hospital could be 15 to 20 minutes away, you know. And truthfully, just being honest, I was afraid I was going to lose my mother at a funeral, you know. The second time was, unfortunately, when my grandmother transitioned. And my mother had a diabetic stroke from the shock. And I had my sister's children with me, and they had to get back to school for their education. And it was very challenging. I mean, my father, rest his soul, he was there at the moment in time. But it was very challenging knowing that I had to leave my mother to try to do better for my family and not knowing if she was going to come home. So I'm going to go back to the May 2018. I was scared. I was angry. I was depressed. You know, sometimes your work environment can make you a little depressed. And I had to be honest with myself. And at that moment, because sometimes we got to get scared before we do things. So we got to get us scared before we make a change. And I remember the doctor said, well, I want you to go to the hospital. And I'm following instructions. I remember I called my parents. It was roughly about 10 p.m. Now, they can already know from the oldest, just based off my tone of voice, if it's something serious. And I remember I woke them up. I was like, hey, Mom, Dad, I don't want you to be concerned. But yet, I got diagnosed as a diabetic. I'm going to the hospital. I heard the change in their voice. I heard my father in the background standing straight up. Like, hey, what's going on with Tyrell? And I said, hey, let them know I'm going to be okay. I said, hey, let them know I'm going to be okay. And then I'm going to defeat this. I am going to do better. And from that moment on, man, I have been working over the last 7 years to continuously improve my health. Of course, when you start out and you start making a change, everything goes favorably, because your body's in shock.
Mm-hmm.
I think my next reading went from 13.1 down to maybe like 8, about an 8. And the doctor was like, okay, hey, you're making some great improvements.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going through life, you're going in the right direction. But then, to your point earlier, a reduction in workforce. And now you're faced with the decision of one thing that you haven't had to take into consideration was when you get that bill that says, hey, this is what the COBRA expense is.
Now, explain to them.
Yeah.
Some folks don't know what COBRA is. Explain to them when you told me this, because again, this isn't something, even as a doctor, that I think about. I say, hey, take this, do this. And then patients look at me and like, I'm choosing. And you said, do I pay for a place to live? Do I pay for lights? Or do I pay for this medicine? So talk about that COBRA construct for me.
Sure. For those that may not be familiar, I would like to believe, but for those that may not be familiar, COBRA is when you are separated from your job for whatever reason. The employer will ask if you wish to continue to be a part of their healthcare plan. Now, as when you're part of a group, the price is significantly reduced. However, when you take on COBRA, that expense may triple, if not quadruple, in this cost. So when we complain about the individual fee of $113, or that's what my current one is. That's how I know it right off the bat. $113 as a single individual, or wherever you may be, and then you take, let's say you've been separated, and now that fee may increase 3 times minimal, if not larger, and you didn't particularly put that in your financial budget. You're faced with a decision that we often hear some of our seniors making that decision of, well, do I pay my heat? Do I pay, or do I pay for this medication? When you're separated from employment, I don't care who you are, you start making, when your foundation is a little cracked, no matter how financial solvent you may be, when that foundation gets cracked, it kind of impacts you. And you start making some decisions that maybe if your foundation wasn't as cracked, you may not have made. And at that time, I chose to keep living life, keeping the lights on, things of that nature. And I was like, you know what, God, if you just keep me, we've all had this prayer. Lord, if you just keep me just enough,
Just enough.
Yeah, just enough. I promise I'll do better. And I kept my promise to God. I kept my promise to God. I kept my promise to myself. More importantly, I had made a commitment to my parents. So I kept that promise. I often say that, especially as men, the confidence or the support that your parents can give you, particularly sometimes it's our mothers, but as African-American men, minority men, or men in general, just period, the support that your father can give you at times can be more impactful than any support that you could ever receive, And I'll say this, I'll give you two quick examples. 2004, I broke my femur, the hardest bone to break in your body. I'm sitting here at the doctor and they say, it might take you about 6 weeks to recover. I looked at that doctor and I said, hey, don't worry about, no, he didn't say 6. He said 8 weeks. He said, it'll take you 8 weeks to recover. I said, I'll be back up in 6. The doctor looked at me. He looked at my father. I recall these words to this day. My father said, if my son said he'll be back up in 6, my son will be back up in 6.
There it is.
I was back up in 6 weeks. Yeah. The only thing that my father said after that was, do you have to go? Because we've never eaten so good since you've been in the house. He said, your mother has never cooked so much. Yes. He's
Something
like,
about having his son there. They get a little boost. They get a little boost.
Yeah. So no, man, it's been a journey. Fast forward, it's been a journey. There has been some ups and downs. I can almost, to this point, I have literally every A1C reading from 2018 to current, documenting my journeys when I've gotten as low as a 6.3. And then sometimes seeing that number go back up and you're like, oh Lord, what am I doing wrong?
What happened?
Did I start, as they say, did you start feeling yourself a little too much? You get some good results and you're like, okay, yeah.
I could take a breather now. Hold on.
Yeah.
Bring that donut back. Bring that donut. So now you mentioned the only trigger that you had that could have been a risk factor. Now, a couple of them. So one of them, the two types of risk factors, there's what we call modifiable and non-modifiable, meaning you can't do anything about your age. You can't do anything about your gender. I know it's a new world now, but genetically, you can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about your family history. But, the thing that you could do something, you said, I was a little overweight. But other than that, you didn't have any, if you don't mind, how much over, just to give people a frame of mind to say, hey, were you 400 pounds and you got down to 200? I mean, what is a little overweight? It's just like when people say, oh, I just got a little diabetes. I said, that's like being a little bit pregnant. I mean, either you got yeah. So what was a little overweight, just so people can get a framework? Because you look fit right now, but I know why. We'll get to that. Don't tell them how we got there yet.
Yeah. So I'm about 5'7". Through my upbringing, the most I weighed was roughly about 160, 170 pounds. At this point in time, I'm up almost, the highest I got up to was 210 pounds. I remember, like I say, going back to May 2018, weighing in, it said you 202 pounds. And you look back at pictures and, you joke and you laugh, but you also kind of have a little serious undertone about it. Like, you guys, if you're my friends, if you're my family, how come you didn't tell me that I was, on the other side of the terrain? But from there, I made the conscientious decision and I was determined, because going back to the financial aspect and being financially sound, I'll chime in and say that this, not only did I get diagnosed with diabetes, I got diagnosed with high cholesterol and high blood pressure.
You got the trifecta. That's what we call the triple threat right there. You had all three of them. And so, man.
So that was enough to, as you say, to scare you straight.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with one thing, man. I started walking. I simply started walking with a neighborhood buddy, neighborhood neighbor. And then we got into kind of like the COVID era. So you had time on your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So then, you're continuously trying to eat a little bit better and trying to better things, and you're not going out spending or socializing as much. Jeez. And I slowly started seeing things reduce and continue to move in a progressive state. I then wanted to find, because this is something that we don't talk about as much, is finding a community of like-minded individuals.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to be determined to go out and want to achieve a goal. But as the saying goes, you go a lot further with others than you do by yourself. It's like this. So I've started finding like-minded individuals who were into running, hiking, cycling, and just being an enthusiast of wanting to learn and being open-minded. It started going with the whole science. Okay, hey, I want to get out here. Okay. When I initially started running in COVID, I thought that the fastest I could run was a 13-minute mile, because at that moment in time, that is what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
A 13-minute mile. And the individuals I was hanging around, they were doing roughly 13-minute miles. And the ones that were faster, I mean, they reminded me of the road runner and the coyote. I'm the coyote trying to catch the road runner, and all I see is dust in the back of their shoes. But it did not deter me. Through going through physical therapists, chiropractors, working on myself, trying to understand, hey, how to make my body better, try to make my mind more determined. Man, we started seeing these improvements, and in a couple of years, it went from a 13 down to an 11-minute mile, then down to a 10-minute mile. And I remember setting this goal because you got to set a goal. You got to set a goal. I said, I'm going to run a 10-minute mile. And there was this one fraternity member, fellow fraternity brother, and I would always utilize him as what we call our rabbit. Like, I wanted to catch this guy. I wanted to defeat him. Not defeat him, but I just wanted to be better.
That's okay. You can say you wanted to feed them. You ain't got to be. Hey, I tell people, don't have pathologic humility. You wanted to win, right? You ain't go into it to say, I'm happy being second. Come on now, we winning, right?
Look,
you wanted to take him down.
Let's just keep it a buck. I wanted to be able to keep up with him and to be able to pass. Yeah. And I remember we were running this local St. Louis race, and I said to myself, because the other thing that you have to be aware of is you have to be a little selfish. And what I mean by that is, normally I'm the guy that would sit back and say, hey guys, we all, if we all got out here together, come on, man, we're gonna bring it all in. And sometimes you have to be aware enough you gotta leave some people behind. And on this day, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do this for me. He's gonna be my rabbit. If he can stay 25 yards in front of me, if I can see him from 25 yards, I'm pretty confident I can catch him. Because, you kind of know how fast somebody's going to go, things of that nature. And I remember we're running, and he'll tell you to this day, I will see him because he's stronger than me, but he didn't have the endurance,
Right. Right.
So he stopped, and I would go, and he'd be like, he'd just start running again. And he stopped again, and I came back, I was like, I know you're not stopping. It's a little different when you got somebody yelling and screaming at you in a race. Sum it up. Came in at we averaged a pace of 9:57 for that particular race.
Man.
Yes. We averaged a pace of 9:57 that race. You know what? And I'll double down on it even more. Fast forward. 2025. I think that was in 2022, 2023. Fast forward, 2025. I'm running another local 5K. Been working out with fraternity brothers, being around like-minded individuals, and on this day, similar to that, I was like, it's gonna be a great day. I don't know how this day gonna be great, but on this day, it's gonna be great. Man, here's my boy, fraternity brother and all. And I'm like, all right, he's gonna be my rabbit. We start, go. Fast forward. I'm like, where is my rabbit? I don't see this brother. I'm like, well, maybe he's gonna catch up. I don't see him. And you look at your watch, and it's like you're doing an 8:46 pace.
You were rolling. You were the rabbit.
And I said, hold up. So I said, and then I had to go through the scenario of quick process. I'm like, you know what? Don't doubt yourself. Get comfortable, get relaxed. If you ain't dead yet, then keep rolling. And I'm out here trying to find other rabbits, and they're stopping along the pace. I'm like, you start getting these whole runner things going in your head. Maybe you can stop. I was like, but why are you gonna stop? The first mile was like 8:46. I'm like, all right, you got to the first mile. If you don't die by the second mile, you halfway okay. Get to the second mile. I'm like, man, if you even think about quitting, you only got a mile to go. I won't keep going, but we get around, your legs starting to slow up, but you're like, no, I'm determined to, I'm going to be determined to finish this race as strong as I can. Now, if you was a sprinter, you could have caught me because there wasn't much kick towards the end. But I finished that race on that day, man, at a pace of 8:55. And I attribute it to being determined enough, also being around like-minded individuals, believing in yourself, and just wanting to do better. Just wanting to do better. And then even when I talked to my physical therapist / chiropractor today, he said, well, Mr. Rodgers, Ty, we fix some of these other body mechanics, with your hips and everything. I think if you're willing to put in the work and you do the exercises that I'm suggesting, I think you can shave another 30 seconds to doggone a minute potentially off of your time.
Now, how important, and you mentioned kind of throughout this process, the importance of community, right? And for us, we both know that community, or at least one of them that's central to who we are and what we do, are the men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Now, how important was that to you? And then what came out of it? Because I know you said it started with a group of brothers and then it evolved into almost this think tank of health, wellness, accountability, all the things that we look for. Talk about the fraternity and how you all created that niche in St. Louis.
It started out with these two brothers just having an idea of, we just wanted to start to address our health. And they would call it every Saturday, Running with the News. And you see it on social media. And I reached out. Hey, closed mouths don't get fed. I reached out. I said, hey, mind if I run with you? Sure, come on. And man, we've been committed, I think, for 6 to 7 years now. Every Saturday, we run a 5K. And then we found local races in the community to run. So it's an opportunity, one, to be around your fraternity brothers. More importantly, during that 40, 30-minute, however your pace is, whether you're doing a walk, run, or anything, to be able to share ideas, to be able to check in with each other, to be able to share what may be on your mind or what may be bothering you in a safe space and get ideas or suggestions on how to address it. Or at least to say, hey, you know what? I heard what you're saying. Did you take this into consideration? And man, I will say this, no matter who you are or where you may be in life, every person needs some form of support at some point, if not multiple points in their lives. Every person is going to need some support, whether it's emotional, spiritual, financial support at some point, if not several points in your lives. And this group of brothers have helped me. There's another fraternity brother. He's a physical fitness trainer. And I remember telling him, he has his line Fitness, Neil Porter, member of Kappa Alpha Psi as well. And he said, I remember telling him when I came into his class, I said, hey man, I'm gonna be your best client. He said, okay, all right. Start coming to his class, fast forward. February 25th, 2025, because I had in October of 2024, I ran the Chicago Marathon on behalf of the American Diabetes Association. And if you know anything about running a marathon, after you do it, you want to take a break. So I took a
Yes.
break. February 25th, 2025, I got on the scale. I was 177 pounds. But if we went into more of the scientific side, it said you have, out of your 177 pounds, you have 36% body fat. Now, I'm moving along that science from a diabetic standpoint in a healthier trajectory. But yeah, 36% body fat, I'm like, brother, you look slim, but you still got a lot of what we call fluff. Yeah, fluff. And I said, okay, well, you ain't where you want to be. But I know that we can be a little bit better. Through working out, being consistent with the diet and everything, on, I think, September 25th, 2025, I weighed in on the scale. Weight was 167 pounds. Muscle mass was from 66 pounds up to 78 pounds. More importantly, my body fat was down to 18.3. The lowest my body fat has been is 15.3. And the thing that, because we're all about achievement, we're all about challenging ourselves. So I've challenged myself that in the first quarter of 2026, I'm going to compete in a physical fitness competition. Now, let me be clear. This is not where you got the tight shorts on. Yeah. Let me be very clear. This will not be you wearing some tight shorts, but it will be a competition. Whereas, hey, you push your body to try to show, hey, just how, from a physique standpoint, you can be physically fit. And then I'll circle back to the American Diabetes and running the Chicago Marathon. Simply put, I wanted to challenge myself. And a couple challenges came out of that. One was believing in yourself that you could actually run a marathon. Because I had done the 5K, done the 10K, which is 6.2 miles, done a half marathon. And then you got your buddies like, hey, man, you gonna run a marathon? And I can be flat honest. My first response was, hell no. I'm not running this little damn marathon. But God has a funny way. On my speedometer in my car, marathon is 26.2 miles. Every day I get in my car, the average mileage would say per gallon, 26.2. Every day, 26.2. And I said, okay, I guess you're trying to tell me something. So, and I still had hesitations. Fast forward, Chicago Marathon, throw your name in the hat. Man, I'm pussyfooting around, as they say. Finally throw my name in the hat. And they said, unfortunately, we won't accept you on the lottery draw. I said, oh, hell no. No. I'm not accepting no.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, there's 3 ways you can get into a marathon. You qualify you can qualify / get picked on the lottery. You can raise money on behalf of a charity, or you can go through some international travel agencies that actually have bibs available if you get their travel package. I went through, I was like, look, if I'm going to ask my friends in my community to assist me, man, I got to find something that's to the heart. American Diabetes Association. Like, hey, what better story is there?
Mm-hmm.
Mother, you know, not only in your community, not only in your family, not only in a fraternity, plenty of brothers impacted by it. And some of the, whether you are serve on a nonprofit board or anything where you got to go out and ask people for assistance, nobody wants to hear no. But no doesn't always mean no right then and there. And secondly is that this, more importantly, I trusted that my community would support me enough to be able to raise the funds needed. And my community supported me, and I remember I was at another fair helping out, giving out perishables in the community. I remember telling ZK, hey, I'm getting ready to run the Chicago Marathon. And she looked, it's like, yeah, whatever. This is what I will say. On that day, because after you achieve something, in our modern day society, sometimes you want to post it as a sense of encouragement. Other times you want to post it to kind of like beat yourself on the chest. Mine was from an encouragement standpoint. And she has this comment on my post. You said what you said. You did what you said you were going to do. I ran that Chicago Marathon, man. I had my community supporting me. I had friends come in from out of town. My local Chicago friends sitting at mile 22 with the signs, man, and everything. Ty, go ahead, Ty. Wanted to do impromptu photo shoots. I'm like, I got to finish this thing.
I mean, that's what happened, man. People show up when you show up, and it sounds like you were able to do. Now, you didn't stop there. Now, I want you to before you give them your pearls and we land this plane, I want you to tell them what your next. Because you told me, you said I'm not stopping at just to Chicago. Tell them this grand plan, just so they can kind of get more motivated, and you can pick up more support from people seeing your story. Go ahead, let them know.
So, 2026. Well, we'll step back. I said, if I'm get selected to be in another major, I'm going to commit to running all 7 majors. And people will say 7. What are the majors? So, like if anything, you got the creme de la creme of marathons, and the 7 majors are. Everybody knows Boston, New York. You got Chicago, London, Berlin, Tokyo, and now you have Sydney. In 2026, I will be running the Sydney Marathon.
Let's go.
I put my name in the hat to run the Berlin Marathon, which I will know if I qualify for after Thanksgiving. And I put my name in to run the Chicago Marathon in 2026, which I'll know if I qualify for on December 11th. My goal is to be 100% better than I was, and to continue to try to just share my word, share my experience. Like I say, it's not Dr. Betts, Brother Betts, is not to brag. It is to show as that example. If you see an example of something that you aspire to be, it's encouraging. And if I can encourage anyone in my family, in my immediate family, whether it's my cousins, whether it's my community, whether it's my frat brothers, you do not have to settle for the stigma. And I'll say it's a stigma of if you get an ailment, it's with you for life. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I can see that finish line and it looks a little bit clearer. And you may say, okay, that's great. Brothers, community, those out there on this platform, let me tell you how great it is. My doctor said, hey, you know what? Because of your results, I want to take you off of your Trulicity insulin shot. Now, some of us would say, okay, what's Trulicity? Trulicity in the world of medicine, and Dr. Betts can speak to us this a little bit better than me, but I'll tell you from my experience. Initially, if you're diagnosed as a diabetic, you get put on a medication such as metformin or something similar. That's like the initial stages. And then if your situation goes a little bit further south, then we get to a point of where you're taking and particularly pricking your fingers on a daily basis, or in modern technology now, you have a patch that you put on the back of your arm or either on your side that you have to change out on, I believe, almost on a weekly basis. And yes, it's effective. It's effective. It is effective. It will tell you exactly what your numbers are when you're doing good, when you're doing bad. The downside is they don't tell you about that little annoying beep that takes place when you going bad. And imagine as a business professional, you're sitting here in a meeting, I'm talking to Dr. Betts, I'm talking finances with him and everything, and you hear a beep go off. And this beep doesn't go, your numbers have gone back down into a normal range. And depending on where your range is when it went off, unless you're going to immediately say, hey, Dr. Betts, you know what, you mind if we continue this meeting over maybe a 30-minute walk? It's going to continue to go off unless you shut it off.
Yeah.
So that's, a little humor, but it is a little annoying.
No, but it's real. But I like the fact that you were able to tell people, I knew where I started, this where I was, and the monitors are great. They keep you on track. But these are some of the things socially that people don't think about. And I do prescribe some diabetes medications, but I use them in a way to reduce cardiovascular risk. So I'm treating diabetes, but really focusing on lowering your cardiovascular risk. And I'm talking about some of the injectables. But in doing that, before we get to that point, we set up a foundation on lifestyle, right? Exercise, fitness, getting enough sleep, making sure you're connected, making sure you got a community that's gonna, number one, hold you accountable, but number two, join in that process with you. Today, and I wish I could say I was completely healthy, but I am not, right? I have a big family history of blood pressure, but today my oldest daughter, she was like, Dad, let's go for a walk in the morning. And I'll go in the gym, but she's like, we just gonna walk. So we walked about 1.5 miles, and it was just good to get out and walk and spend time with her. And so now, knowing that we were getting ready for this conversation, I was like, okay, what are your goals? All right, these are my goals. We're gonna put them together. We're gonna work together to hit those same goals so that, I got an accountability partner too. So I love the fact that you not only brought in, the people you love, but you're inspiring people that you don't know. You're reaching your arms around the fraternity. You said it, brothers sometimes suffer in silence, right? Because, nobody want to tell anybody, hey, I'm on this, or I'm taking that, or hold up, let me run and inject this. Nobody wants to, but the fact that you are vulnerable and you are open and you are articulating the path that people don't often see, because just looking at you, you don't look like, let me say it like this, you don't look like what your paperwork says you should look like. How about that? What would be 3 or 4 things that you could tell them that they can use to put into their toolkit to try to battle back against diabetes or battle back against these behaviors or whatever it is? What would be some things you would say as we close out this show?
Sure. One, be honest with yourself. You should never, we do it from time to time, but try not to lie to yourself. 2, never be too big to admit that you need some assistance. 3, try to seek out that assistance. Because sometimes we admit that we need help, but then do we take that step to actually go seek it out? And then 4, make a commitment to yourself. Man. I'll say this one statement. You are allotted 24 hours in a day. 8 of those hours we're supposed to sleep. Another 8, technically, we're supposed to be at work. Then you get the final 8 between family and things of that nature. Aren't you worth at least an hour out the day to yourself? Out of the 24 hours that you allotted, you can break it down, seconds, Aren't you worth a minimum of an hour of a day to dedicate just to yourself? Don't forget to take care of yourself. Too many times, we put everybody else in front of us, in front of ourselves, and forget to address, ideally, who should be the most important person. You. Because the way I was taught, and it takes a long time for me to learn this lesson. If you're no good to yourself, how could you even think about being good to others? I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, oh, it's going to be smooth sailing all the time, because it's not. I'm not going to say that you're not going to have some doubts in life, or you're going to question, is this even working? Or you're not going to want to quit every now and then. But I will say that once you start taking a step forward, please try to remember why you initially took the step. And if you can remember that, along with having a community, hopefully seeing some positive progress, I would like to believe, and also seeing quality examples of where you want to be. Remember that picture of when President Obama allowed a kid to touch his head from an envisionment standpoint? Envision where you want to be. Find someone who's already been where you're trying to go. Let them be your example. Let them be your rabbit, as I said earlier, and continue along the path.
Brother Rodgers, Ty, this was wonderful. I couldn't have imagined that you would articulate not only a pathway of progress, but also a strategy toward perfection. Like I tell my patients, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. And the fact that you were able to track and walk people through the ups, the downs, those plateaus that we've had, I think really allow people to embrace, lifestyle as a way to move forward. Understanding that there still is a role for medicine. So, you said it. So that means that at least every quarter, right? The first quarter of next year, we're going to have a check-in and see where we are, right? From fitness shows with little shorts to running marathon. I know you ain't going to wear the little shorts. You know, I had to throw that in there, right? But from fitness shows to marathons, we going to get these updates, man, so people can stay inspired and they can track where you're going. Now, if people want to follow either the groups of such as Kappa Alpha Psi or other running groups that you have, where can they find you or where can they link in, lock in? I know you have a couple of nonprofits that you assist from a finance, kind of helping them with. Where can they lock in to find out more information if they need to?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to give it to you in this day and age on all three platforms. If you can find me on LinkedIn, of course, underneath my name, Tyrell Rodgers. You can find me on Facebook as Ty Rodgers. I believe there's not many with this beautiful face that I have. And then you can also find me on Instagram underneath Ty Parlay, and Parlay is Parlay. And I'll be more than happy to connect you to any of the groups that I have. If you want to just say, hey, you know what? I want to ask you a personal question. I'm more than willing to assist because I needed some assistance and support along the way in my journey as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing again. And I'm going to give you the rest of those hours back. But I can tell you people are going to use this to build not only a platform, but a pathway to progress. As he said, our goal shouldn't be to push forward and expect that things are going to be perfect. But what we have to do first is be honest with ourselves. Secondly, we have to reach out and ask for help beyond, kind of taking that tough role, move toward a space of humility. And finally, understand that sometimes it's okay to take some time out for yourself. Like I always say, self-care is not being selfish. Again, I appreciate you all for joining us today. This is Dr. Batts on the About That Life podcast, where we tackle diabetes through the lens of a professional who embraced it, who looked at it and said it won't win. So as you move forward and as you move together, reach out for your community, reach out ultimately to change the path where you're going and understand that you can live intentionally forever. Thank you.
We truly hope you enjoyed today's episode of the About That Life podcast. If you did, leave a comment, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And certainly join us for our next episode of the About That Life podcast.